My name is Emily Watson, and today I'll be presenting the last 6 months I've been completing a forestry fellowship as an orchard technician. My host site was American Forest, and I was located at the Seed Orchard in Foresthill, California. The last 6 months, my main focus has been to maintain and restore the seed orchard. Before I arrived, it was maintained by just one guy. It's 314 acres with 178 of those acres being seed orchards. So that was a ton for just one person to manage. So when I came in, a lot of the work was just trying to get it back up and running at its full capacity. I was focusing on cone production and the overall health of the trees, but I also wanted to increase the capacity at the orchard to monitor and collect any viable cone crops. And ultimately, the goal is to help fill in the gaps at the state seed bank. The majority of our cones we were looking at were sugar pine that were rust resistant. Okay, starting off with some of the projects and accomplishments. On the left-hand side, cone collection. That was obviously a huge part of this role. In the picture, that's me up in the man lift in one of our sugar pine orchards collecting cones. The first several months, we were just collecting premature cones for a somatic embryogenesis research project that the University of, I believe, South Carolina was putting on, where they are trying to figure out how to clone the embryos of our rust-resistant sugar pine. So that was kind of cool. We would box up all the pine cones in big coolers and mail it out to South Carolina, which is really expensive, by the way. I did not know that it would be that much. And they've done it for the last couple of years, so we're able to add another year into their research study. After the somatic embryogenesis research project was done, we started moving into our full cone collection in September. Unfortunately, we lost about 3/4 of our viable cone crop to tree squirrels. They pretty much decimated all of our sugar pines. And then what the squirrels didn't get, a lot of them ended up being buggy. We had a lot of bugs this year as well. I was still able to collect from one of our sugar pine orchards, and I got about 10 bushels of MGR blister rust resistant sugar pine cones out of that orchard. So I was still pretty happy with the fact that we got to take some down to the Placerville nursery, and they were able to process those for us. So besides the man lift that's in that left-hand picture, I also got some experience operating other heavy machinery, which was really exciting for me. In that middle picture, you can see that I'm operating our John Deere tractor, and that was really instrumental in the day-to-day activities. I used it pretty much throughout every season that I was there. In addition to the tractor and the lift, I learned how to operate our bulldozer. And as a bonus, I learned how to drive stick shift while working at the orchard, which was a really big deal for me. I'm really thankful that I had an American Forest coworker with me. Her name's Shemaine. She was kind and patient enough to teach me stick shift so that I could operate the Forest Service trucks around the orchard. On the right-hand side, that is a picture of me doing survival surveys. I'm holding my clipboard. Pretty much we had to go through and inventory all of our MGR and SRR rust-resistant sugar pine trees. It was pretty unclear in the paperwork that we did have when the last time a survival survey was done. So it was really pertinent that we go through and inventory any signs of blister rust or any trees that we noticed were dead or dying and try to figure that out. And fun fact, the tree that I'm standing in front of in this picture, I had to climb down it on my third day on the job because our lift had an electrical issue and we were stuck up in a tree. So I had to jump into that tree and climb down. So I took a picture in front of it to remember it forever. Okay, moving along. These 3 tasks and projects were pretty ongoing throughout the time I was at the orchard. The nice thing about the Foresthill Seed Orchard was that there were so many different tasks and projects that I could work on that I could kind of pick and choose and have something different on a weekly basis because there was just a lot of work to be done. So it kept it interesting. But the irrigation was a huge one. In our North Zone seed orchard, that's where we have about 1,500 young sugar pine trees. There was no irrigation going to them, but then by the time the summer closed, we had irrigation and water running to all 1,500 of those young sugar pines. So that involved a lot of T-joint replacement, a lot of unplugging emitters, and adding lines where they had been broken or had become brittle from not being used. And that left pictures of view from the North Zone seed orchard, which is really pretty. And fertilizing was another project that we did in the North Zone seed orchard. So you can see we attached our fertilizer dispenser onto the John Deere tractor. And then we drove in between the rows, weaving through to get those younger trees fertilized. And then fencing, the Foresthill Seed Orchard did have a perimeter fence at one point, but just because of the rotting posts that were put in the 70s and the snow load on a year-to-year basis, the fence was in really, really rough shape. So we have been trying to go through and kind of piece it together and save however much of the barbed wire we can. That's something we got the front line pretty much done along the road, so hopefully we'll have less vagrants out on the property. But that'll be something that we'll have to continue working on that for quite a while. Okay, mowing and pruning. On the left-hand side of the screen, that is our bulldozer that we used, and it has the flail mower attached to the back of it. And that was something I found really interesting. Marie and I were able to attach the flail mower onto the dozer, and we had to replace all of the knives, all of the blades on the dozer or on the flail mower. They were really dull and hadn't been changed out in probably a decade. So we ordered all new knives and mounting clips, and we changed all of them out. There's 84 of them, so it took forever. And then we turned it on and figured out that the mounting clips that John Deere had sent us were a 1/4 inch longer than they were supposed to be. And so we had to take everything off and do it all over again, but it was a good learning process. And now I'm a flail mower expert. That is what we use to mow the tall grass around some of the orchards and around the offices, just for fire safety and to make it more accessible for the rest of our machinery. We also did quite a bit of pruning. Since all of our sugar pines are grafted, we have to keep an eye on the rootstock to make sure that they aren't shooting out any limbs or trying to take over. A lot of the trees have never been pruned or they haven't been pruned in several decades. So there was a lot of pruning to be done, which led into a lot of burn piles. I created a total of 11 burn piles, just from consolidating all the brush from previous years and all the brush from our pruning, as well as dragging larger trees with either the tractor or the bulldozer into those piles as well. And that's me on the John Deere in the middle dragging a felled tree. Last but not least was vermin control. And this is something that I would have never expected for this to play such a huge part in a forestry job for me, but I found that I had a knack for it, surprisingly. So for the vermin control, and I'm an animal lover, I will preface it by saying that, but the rodents were really detrimental to our facilities and our cone crops. Like I mentioned before, they ate approximately 3/4 of our sugar pine cone crop. And then the ground squirrels were tunneling underneath the foundation of all of our buildings. They were tunneling around our well pumps and our wells and our propane tanks. And they were just making a mess. So by the end of the squirrel season, they're in hibernation now, but I was able to trap 37 of those squirrels. Now that it's been raining for a little bit, it's transferred over into gopher season. The gophers are really harmful, especially to the younger trees, because they love to tunnel around the root systems, and that soil disturbance is really harmful to those baby trees. So that's why we trap the gophers as well. And so far, I've gotten 19 gophers, but I didn't check the traps today, so I think it's going to be higher than that. And as well as mice, we have a lot of mice that like to come into the office in the colder weather. I've gotten 6 of those, and I've gotten one really big fat wood rat, which was gross. But yeah, again, that's something that I wasn't really expecting to enjoy that, but it felt kind of good to get my revenge after they ate all of my pine cones. All right, professional development. I was able to get my Wilderness First Responder certification. Thank you, Bridget, for coordinating that and setting that up. I also attended the Forest Service Entomology and Mycology Field Training Day that was out in Sierraville. That picture on the right-hand side was from the Forest Service Mycology and Entomology training. He was showing us some dwarf mistletoe. If anyone gets a chance to go to one of those in the future, I would highly recommend it. I went to 2 of the Reforestation Pipeline Cooperative meetings. I went to the American Forest Cone Camp. I went to the Region 5 Nursery and Reforestation Practitioner Symposium. And I also created an outreach flyer and led a tour of 35 silviculture professors through the orchard to kind of show them what we've been up to. Okay, the future in forestry, looking ahead for myself, I really hope to continue my career in reforestation. The last 6 months, I've kind of fell in love with this niche orchard work, and I just love it. I'd love to return to Foresthill. The plan is to come back for another 6-month fellowship, hopefully in July of 2024. And if I do return for another term, my goals would include obtaining my drone pilot's license, enrolling in a GIS for forestry course, and collecting a lot more cones and trapping even more squirrels. This concludes my presentation. At this time, I would love to answer any questions that you guys might have.
Good job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I guess if we're taking questions, I have a couple.
Yeah, go for it.
I'm curious if you have any like plans for how you are gonna combat those bug issues in the future, and if there's gonna be anything done proactively about that.
Yeah, I know that we have been talking about spraying some insecticide for the bugs, because Marie is getting her license, the pesticide and insecticide license. So hopefully we'll be able to spray so that whatever the squirrels don't get, we can have the bugs hopefully be mitigated a little bit. And then I know Marie was talking about maybe putting the cones on the kiln as soon as we drop them off when possible. Because she said that if you put the cones on the kiln right away and heat them up, then the bugs will leave immediately instead of them being in the bags with the bugs with the cones inside still. But I'm not sure. That's something we'll have to hash out next year when cone season comes a little bit closer.
Nice. I know that with the sugar pine cones, we had to wait until the temperatures dropped down to like average below like 75, because if it's anything above like 75 degrees Fahrenheit, then we can't run the sugar pine through our cone kiln, because it just bogs it up with like too much sap and stuff like that. So we have to wait for temperatures to cool down in order for us to like process those sugar pines. So that's definitely something I'm thinking about as well. Like, how do we preserve the sugar pine during that like phase where we have to have it like sitting? So yeah, that's definitely something I can think about too.
Definitely. Any other questions?
I don't really have a question, but I took notes on this notebook in front of me, and it's incredible to see how much work you accomplished in the last 6 months. It is like amazing that you went in there and resurrected the seed orchard, literally, because you were the first person to work there in many years. And so I know that the trees really appreciated it. But also just your attitude throughout the whole thing. And I love that I got to write down trapped 37 squirrels, 19 gophers, 6 mice, and 1 rat. Because I know that we like talked a little bit about that in the interview process, and Kelsey and Taylor and I were like, we have to make sure this candidate is going to be okay with all of these things that are going to be thrown their way, because it's going to be quite a unique position. But you really took it on in a way that like I can't imagine anyone really having a more positive attitude and just tackling each thing with excitement and care for the orchard as a whole. So Just thanks for all your hard work. And I didn't know that the seed orchard was 314 acres, so I'm learning a lot. And also somatic embryogenesis, the fact that you say that is wild. So I'm gonna look more into that afterwards. But yeah, thanks for all your hard work. And this was an awesome presentation.
Thank you. I'll send you the results from this year when they send it over to us.
Emily, you had a really cool opportunity to work on such a diverse range of tasks and activities. And I'm just wondering if there's any one or a few that stood out as the favorite parts of your fellowship term.
Ooh, I mean, the cone collection was really awesome because I feel like it just hit home why we're here and why I got a job and why, we're staffing people out there and trying to reforest the forests that have been decimated, like collecting the cones and putting them into the bags or sending them off to the research project. It was kind of like literally and figuratively seeing the fruits of our labor. And it was at the beginning of the term, so it was kind of cool. Like it inspired me to like, okay, I collected these cones. Like now I know I need to go kick ass for another 5 months so that next year we can get even more cones. And that was something that it was a really, really cool experience. Being up in the trees, looking out over the canyons, it's so beautiful, like so peaceful. And that's something that I would love to do again. I think the rodent trapping too, that was something that took me by surprise. I'd never trapped a rodent before, and I was just like trying to keep an open mind, like, okay, I'll keep an open mind and just do it and see how it goes. And then I ended up, it was relaxing to me weirdly, like going in the morning, I'd be drinking my coffee, just walking around checking squirrel traps. And I'm like, it's weird. You can surprise yourself in jobs like that, which I haven't surprised myself like that in a long time. So it was kind of cool to see, okay, I learned something new about myself in this term. Something that I probably would have never figured out if I hadn't taken this job. So that was another highlight for sure.
That's so awesome. I loved pretty much on every one of your monthly reports, you had some sort of vermin trapped photo.
Yep, it was really exciting.
Emily, first of all, congratulations on a epic term. Well done.
Thank
Kudos
you.
also, it sounds like you free climbed down a tree after getting stuck up there.
Yeah.
Terrified. I'm wondering if you had at the seed orchard, like all the people and all the resources at your disposal, if there was any project you would want to see done there. Just like imagine like full staff with like all the monies, what would you do there?
Ooh, I would like to add in some more seed orchards. If we had all the staff and unlimited resources, because we have, like I said, it was almost 180 acres of seed orchards, but then there's another like 100 and odd acres of just space that we can kind of play with and work with. So I'd like to add in incense cedar orchards and then maybe add in some more sugar pine, maybe do like an experimental plot, things like that where I just feel like we have space that if we got everything that we already have established in good working order, then it would free up so much for us to be able to add new orchards in, which could be cool because there's a lot of space out there. There's a ton of room for expansion.
Nice. Yeah, I didn't realize how big it was. That's a huge area.
Yeah. And at first, I think it was like, oh, it's like 150 acres. And so I thought that was the total number, but that's just just the orchards. It's beyond that, like another 800 or so acres of either vacant space or buildings, stuff like that. It's really cool to drive through it. There's a bunch of like back roads that cut through that are all overgrown and look really scary. But if you go back and kind of wander through, there's all sorts of trails and paths and cool stuff to explore.
Emily, that's fantastic. Wonderful presentation and a wonderful summary of 6 months of, really passionate, dedicated work. I got to echo both Bridget and Kelsey's comments and questions. When we when we came up with this position in early summer, we knew that we had to hire somebody very special. I love Bridget's term here, resurrecting the seed orchard. We knew that we needed somebody with skill set, with experience, independence, interdependence, but also somebody with just a remarkable positive attitude. So all of us have just been so grateful and really just kind of in awe, really, of your positive attitude going forward. And I guess that's my comment. And I guess that leads into my question, just for whoever's going to watch this, however we share this out. What is your positive attitude? Is that something that just comes to you naturally? Is that something that you have to cultivate every day? Is this something where how does your attitude and the way that you work involve and integrate with the way that you work?
I feel like positivity, part of it like comes naturally. Like I really intentionally try my day to day to like stay positive. Obviously, some days are easier than others, but I feel like for me in my work, I have to cultivate it some days. Like the day that I got stuck up in the lift and had to climb down the tree, it would have been so much harder if I had been like, oh, this is gonna suck, like I'm gonna fall and hurt myself. Blah, blah, blah. Like it's to me, it's just you're gonna have to face challenges no matter what. So it's better to face it with a positive attitude, because then when you come out it on the other side, you're going to be in an even better place, I feel like. But I think it's important, and open-mindedness is huge too with that kind of thing, especially if you're doing something unknown, like driving a bulldozer or killing a squirrel. Like if you have an open mind, then it allows you to give yourself space for positivity and just keep that mindset of that you're doing it for a reason. You have to remind yourself what that reason is sometimes. But yeah, I hope that made sense.
No, it totally does. And I'm going to try and do my best to learn from you. So I appreciate it so much. Thank you for all your work and for presenting it so well, and for really, setting the stage for this really critical work to happen at Foresthill and with this position. So thank you so much. Really, really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.